So it is in the heart of summer. Have you finalized your travel plans yet?
Yes. So I booked my flight ticket yesterday.
Oh, good for you.
I know. So
Nice.
I'm going back home to Taiwan for a whole month.
Wow, are you excited?
Yes.
But
Yes, but I always feel like it's a little bit weird to go home because I've become more and more Americanized now, where I definitely feel like there's a difference between me and everyone else that lives there.
the age-old conundrum, Asian versus Asian American.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Janice.
I'm Emily.
And this is 4 years later, where we normalize the unglamorous life of a 26-year-old
Asian American woman, all 4 years after college.
So this whole idea about Asian versus Asian American, that's what we're going to be exploring today. And I can kind of kick it off. I mean, as I've slowly started to really integrate myself in the U.S.,
Right.
like after graduating college, now I've built this life for like 5 years in the U.S. on the West Coast. I definitely feel like I'm moving farther and farther away from being Asian, right? Like
Totally.
I've been to an American school my whole life, but I always lived in Asia. So I had this,
Right.
like, my whole family would tell me about the traditions, and there are certain days where we do certain things and celebrate
Right.
certain things. But now coming back here, I don't speak as much Mandarin as I want to. I actually barely speak it now.
But you're fluent.
I am
You
fluent,
can speak to your family in Mandarin.
but
yeah.
it doesn't feel as fluent anymore because I'm like forgetting words.
Out of practice.
And
Right.
also, you can kind of hear like an Americanized Mandarin now because I'm not surrounded by people that speak it and it's just with my parents. It's
Right.
crazy the difference.
Right.
But it's this whole battle. It's like, okay, now I'm starting to feel even more Asian American.
Right.
But it's like, am I Asian enough? No. Am I American enough? No.
So, like, technically, are you considered an immigrant because you're coming from Taiwan, but you live here?
I guess so, but I always kind of thought about an immigrant as someone who wasn't a citizen. I don't know why.
Oh, but you are a citizen.
We are, yeah. My whole family is.
Okay, so how does that work? How did that work?
My parents applied for citizenship when they came here for school, and then they worked here for a while.
Okay, I
And
see.
then just me being born, like I was lucky enough to have citizenship.
I see. That's really nice.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess there's like this cultural fear that you have of growing or like spending the last 5, 6, whatever years it's been in the U.S. that you're too westernized now when you
Yes.
go back, and the loss of being out of practice in Mandarin, like you're feeling like, oh, people will be able to tell,
People can tell.
or people can't tell.
Like when I go back to Taiwan and
Uh-huh.
I'm getting a cab somewhere and I say the address of where I'm going, they're like, oh, how long have you been in the U.S.?
Oh, you're like knife to the heart.
I'm like, oh my God, I was born here, lived
Yeah.
here for 14 years or whatever. And I have this thing. Well, I feel so guilty because I'm like, wow, I'm out of touch.
Okay.
I would literally either call my mom or I will like talk to her and be like, Mom, let's recite this address in perfect Mandarin. And we'd practice it fluently
Yeah.
until I could get in the cab, say it really quick, like they believe I live here.
Oh my God.
But that's more not to get scammed. Like, I feel like if they think I'm an American, they'll just drive me around. And
Safety as well, just to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, I see. But that's like kind of anxiety ridden. The fact that you were trying to practice it with your mom just to make sure you get it perfectly, just to like seamlessly blend in. And I feel like you probably have other tactics that you did when you first like came to the US, like that you tried to be more American and like drop some of those like cultural habits you had. Or were there any?
honestly, I don't know if it's the same for the other way around because I feel like I went to an American school where it was so normalized to do American things that when I came here, it was natural to gravitate towards that. But I felt guilty because I'm like, I am Taiwanese and like my family is Taiwanese and
Right.
like, how can I forget this part of me.
The
Right?
guilt.
Right. And I know when Christmas is and I know when Thanksgiving is, but how do I not know when Chinese New Year is or when tomb sweeping day is? Like,
Oh, okay. I don't even know what that is.
yeah, but all these practices like that are maybe towards like the religion that your family is from, which I think you can kind of relate to, right? Like you kind of brought up last time this whole Buddhist practice.
Yeah. But mine's a little bit different because, or maybe it is similar to yours, but like the specific sect of Buddhism that my family practices is like specifically for Japanese people. So like
Right.
everyone, well, for the most part, that practices this specific type of Buddhism is Japanese. And there's like a mother, like Hondo, or like a mother temple that exists in Japan. And then all of these like offshoot temples that are in America.
Do you ever feel like guilty that you don't know everything about that religion because you don't live in Japan and your whole, like even your grandparents are from here?
Yeah. So I'm technically like 4th and 5th generation Japanese American, which means that like my great grandparents and I think like just my great grandparents and my great great grandparents are actually the ones that came from Japan to the US. So I am like very much so like out of touch with like a lot of traditional Japanese practices and things like that. But I'm still 100% Japanese. Like that is my entire family line. So there is like a lot of confusion, like where exactly do you fall? I don't speak the language or anything like that. But I don't know if I feel guilt though in the same way that you do. Like I don't think there's anything that I feel guilty about. I just feel excluded mostly. Like religion was a big deal for me growing up because I grew up in a super white small town, population like 50,000. There's like that's a small town. And everyone around me was white and Christian. And like the Christian part is so important because there's so much information that gets like put on you as a kid, especially relating to like going to hell if you don't believe in God. I was told that several times. Like I would go to like these Christian youth groups with my friends just because that's what people did over the summer or after school. I would join like different sports leagues in part with the church because that was a social activity. And in there they prayed. I didn't pray because I knew that I was Buddhist. Part of me, maybe not guilt, but felt resentment towards my family that why weren't we Christian? This would have made my life so much easier if I had just been able to blend in. But because we were not Christian, my whole family is Buddhist, like that was never going to be part of the equation. So I tried not to talk about the fact that I was Buddhist just because I felt like an outsider. Yeah.
I kind of know what you mean. Like being Christian seems like the quote unquote cool thing to do.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
it's really, it was just because everybody around in your school or you're in your hometown did that.
Yes, agreed.
Do you feel like now you try to kind of embrace or tap into the side of you being Japanese? Because I think for me, that's part of the guilt, that it's like I didn't embrace my family's culture and tradition soon enough. I kind of, like you, I was like, well, this would have been so much easier if I just was in a cool religion. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it just, and then now it's like I feel guilty that I didn't try harder to remember these days or these traditions, or I didn't put enough effort. And now I still can, but all that past time.
Right. You're thinking about, if only I had practiced my Mandarin more, or if I had like went to all these events, like participated in these holidays, maybe I would be Taiwanese enough.
Right.
Now.
Yes.
But you don't feel up to par per se.
I don't feel up to par, and it's crazy to say that. Like, I feel guilty for being who I am. You know,
yeah.
It's really weird. But it's like, I don't fit in here. I don't fit in there.
Right. And it's so funny that you feel less than, because I look at you and I think, oh my God, like I don't speak Japanese. Like there are a lot of foods that you probably eat in your family that I would look at and be like the equivalent to being Japanese. Like, I don't meet that criteria. I don't eat that. Like, I'm not Japanese enough.
Emily tried Korean barbecue
For the first time in college. I had never really had Korean food because it wasn't in my small town. I ate Japanese food, but like, you know those drinks that have the marble in it?
No, you've never had those?
I tried it for the first time like a couple weeks ago. The ramune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You tried to finish the whole bottle so you can then take the marble out and keep it.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh my gosh.
So like, there's so many things like that where it's like, how could I have not known some of those things? I mean, I feel like for a lot of Asian Americans, especially if you don't grow up in like a big city or like metropolitan area, you're just trying to survive. You just want to like exist among white people, which is really tough. Like, I know now looking back at it, I had a colleague at work like last week. We only like really speak on Zoom, of course, and like on Slack, but he messaged me, which I thought was really sweet, and said, hey, just out of curiosity, can you tell me how to pronounce your last name? Just to make sure next time. Not that he ever uses my last name, because we're just like colleagues, but he was like, just so I know, just in case I have to say your last name. Thought it was super respectful and really sweet. And it was interesting because when I asked my mom, how should we like pronounce our last name? Because so many people would ask in school. She said, you can say Yamane. And if you ask like a Japanese person how to say my last name, it's Yamane, ne, not ne. And so when we were growing up, my mom said, that's fine. Just say Yamane, because it's easier. It's easier for people to understand. And I didn't think twice about it, because I was like, okay, like this is what my mom's telling me to do, so I'm just going to tell people that. And it put everyone around me at ease to be able to say it a lot easier. Not that ne and ne is that big of a difference, but it was easier. And I thought about that last week as I was telling him, like, oh, I could revert this. Like, I can tell him the right way. I ended up telling him both. I said, you can say it this way. My mom has said you can say it the other way. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter to me. But that's like a prime example of how you kind of have to shift your life growing up as Asian American, like to fit the comfortability of the people around you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I think growing up in the U.S., you are now trying to make others people's life more convenient.
Yes.
And it's, at first, I don't think we really register that it's like us giving up a part of the Asian side of us, whatever that may be, like Japanese, Taiwanese. But now
You're aware.
I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think also over time, we're lucky enough to live in a place that champions diversity.
Yeah.
And maybe that also partially drives guilt, right? Because the more Americanized I get, and people ask me, what's the history of Taiwan? Or like, what do you sell at blah, blah, blah. And I can't answer these questions.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow, I am so one-sided. Like, I have this amazing background, this diverse background where I'm from all these places. But now all I can tell you is like something American about me. And I've completely dismissed this side of me that I wish I remembered more about.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like when you try to shed those parts of you growing up and stuff, it feels sort of like a gain, because you're gaining like respect from the other people, that they get you even though they don't actually understand what you're saying. It feels like you've won because you're assimilating, you're like connecting to these people. And now that we're growing up, you're like, I lost that opportunity to explain it, to like own, like, yeah, that's how it works in my culture, and like that's how it worked where I grew up and stuff like that. It's a total loss. But it is so interesting that we look at it like that. Like, oh, now because of all those sacrifices I made to not acknowledge my heritage, like I'm paying for it now, and it sucks.
And that's us trying to be more American, right?
Yes.
But the other way to look at it is also we are trying to be Asian in the U.S. by sharing things like, oh, I like stinky tofu, and people are like, oh my God, you like that?
Yeah.
Or just like explaining the beauty standards, you know?
Yes.
But
oh my God.
teaching people here about like Taiwan's history and things like that, I feel more Asian. But when I go
Right.
back to Taiwan, I'm reminded like, you don't actually know all that much.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like in terms of the food comment, like we've all had that like quintessential moment with food where you've been eating something next to someone that has never heard of that food, smelled that food, or seen it before, and that person makes a comment.
Like you open your lunchbox and just
like,
the
woof!
smell hits you.
Yeah. I feel like those types of interactions are ones that like we'll just never forget. They're kind of like ingrained in your mind. And like part of me feels like we've progressed as a society to a point where like, oh, like people like Asian food. I think there's still some cultures that like I'm still trying to like get to know and like understand better, and like the rest of the world is also trying to catch up to. But I would say like these days sushi is really common.
It
Like,
is.
a lot of Japanese food, at least I know, is like trendy. People like it. And I guess like it's kind of like maybe I'm disillusioned a bit to think that it's so normalized now. But my cousin, he's 9, and he's going to be in 4th grade. But he's half Japanese, so my uncle married my aunt who's white, and he took chicken teriyaki to school like a couple weeks ago. And like that's everywhere. Everyone knows what chicken teriyaki is, right? And that's almost not even that Japanese anymore. At that point, like chicken teriyaki is like pretty like Japanese American. And he took it to school, and some kid like opened his mouth and was like, "What's that?" And
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Chicken teriyaki.
Chicken teriyaki and rice. And my little cousin, who's like, he's very strong, and he was like, "It's chicken teriyaki and it's good," and stood up for himself. And it made me like emotional to hear that story from him, because like he brushed it off. He's like, "Yeah, I can't believe that happened to me," and like just started talking about his Lego or something like
He's
that.
amazing.
He's amazing. He's such a cool kid. And I was like, whoa. Like, what did he say when you said that? And he was like, I don't know. I just told him that it's like really good. And then I just like went and played with someone else or something. And I was like, wow, like I wish I was that cool when I was 9 to like tell whoever it was that I think I brought edamame to school. And like that was the thing that was like, ooh, like what is that? And that's when, you start bringing your Lunchable, your PB&J, and like everything changes. But that's such a pivotal moment, I feel like. That all of us have as being Asian American.
I also kind of had that, and it's funny because I went to school in Hong Kong, so you're always with Asian people as well. But I brought in my mom's like homemade dumplings, and there's a pungent smell to them.
Okay.
So when you open it, it hits you, and people will be like, "Oh my God, what is that?"
And that's among Asian students.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a mix, but you would
okay,
think
okay.
that it's like international kids, like
Yeah.
you wouldn't say that, but it happens because we're at an American school, right?
Wow.
And even those kids are like, what is that?
That's wild.
And I used to be embarrassed, and we don't have Lunchables. I literally did not know what Lunchables were until my freshman year. Where I was like, what are these things?
Yeah.
And I would just ask my mom, like, can I just get lunch from school sometimes?
Oh.
And now thinking about it, it like hurts my heart.
Yeah.
But one thing I kind of did in high school was in Hong Kong, I would share my lunch sometimes, and people would be like, wow, this is incredible. And stop reacting to my food. But
Yeah.
instead they'd be like, can I have some?
Oh, wow.
Which I think was really great. And during like Chinese New Year or things like that, my mom would always ask me to invite my friends over, and then we would have all this Asian food, or these like dishes like fish and dumplings and Chinese pancakes and whatever.
Yeah.
So that people would be able to taste our culture. But it's crazy
cool.
because now when I say something like, I love stinky tofu, people immediately hear the word stinky and they're like, gross, Janice. But then I'm
Yeah.
like, you can't judge me for that because you eat blue cheese.
Yeah. There's always an equivalent.
Right. But
That's
they
so
don't
true.
register that.
Yeah.
Like they think that's fine. But when you hear stinky tofu, that's not cool.
Yeah. I had a really interesting like thing with food in college because it entered this like third dimension for me. So at first growing up, it was like, okay, you're either white or you're not white, right? And so for me, like obviously I'm Japanese, so I had my Japanese like traditions and foods and all that stuff that I had that like my white friends like didn't understand, and I was different because of that. I just like thought, oh, if I just go to UCLA where there's a ton of Asian people, they're just gonna get it. They're gonna get me, and like it's gonna be fine.
I don't think that's true.
That wasn't true. I don't know how it is if you're like Chinese or like anything else, but I know for Japanese Americans, it is such a different culture to be Japanese American than it is to be Japanese. We have different terms for different words that we've taken from Japanese language that we use that are not used in Japan today. There are certain foods that we eat that like my Japanese friends that are like mostly just Japanese had never heard of, don't ever eat. And the reason is because like when our great grandparents or our grandparents came over from Japan, they took whatever lingo was cool and trendy at the time, whatever food like they were eating at that moment, brought it over to America, and we've just got stuck in a time machine there. Like we just were stuck in whatever year it was that they moved and took all those words and phrases and dishes that they were eating then, and we just continued to eat them. So like in Japan, you might say like we're gonna use a toilet, but Japanese Americans say benjo. You want to go to the bathroom, like benjo, and that's not a term used in Japan today. That's kind of a weird thing to say.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
I think I kind of weirdly know this because my cousins are half Japanese.
Oh, okay.
But in Japan, I think it's a generation thing. Like every generation has their own lingo or their own evolution of Japanese. So even like the traditional, and I might be wrong, but I think that's what it is, which is so interesting because in Taiwan, there isn't like an evolution of the language, but people can just, they get a little bit more cliquey when they know you're Asian, when you're not from Taiwan. Like I am from Taiwan, but I already look and sound Americanized,
Right.
and they aren't. And so immediately it's like, you won't understand what I'm saying. You're not really from here.
Right. They kind of put you in your own little box.
Right.
I see. But I think the other thing too is like you don't hear very many other Asian people that are like third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation, except for Japanese people. I don't know. I know one.
That's a good point.
One of my friends in college, he's fourth gen Chinese. He's the only person I know that is Chinese and like not like first or second gen.
I think you're right.
Do you know anyone
No,
else?
I don't. I'm trying to think about people that aren't, and I don't know.
But that would be right why there wouldn't be that like total shift. Like there's such a distance between me being like fourth and fifth gen to someone that immigrated from Japan. We are very different people, right? Like because of all the things I just said. But if you're Chinese or you're Korean or whatever, and there's only like first, second generation, there's that distance is truncated by a lot compared to mine.
That's true.
So there isn't that much time between the generations. So the cultures, the lingo, the foods, mostly the same.
I agree with that. I think it's mostly just the attitude and your thought process. Like, I've realized coming back here to the US, when I go home, I'm automatically like 10 shades darker than anyone there because a tan looks healthy here, but a tan there is like, what are you doing? You have been working in the rice fields.
Yeah.
Literally, like that was the old belief. The traditional belief was if you were dark, that meant like you were out there working in the sun to make your money.
Like a status thing?
Yes, but if you had wealth, you would be at home being served, right? And there's no sunlight, and you can't get a tan inside your house unless it's a fake tan, but they didn't have that back then.
I didn't know that was why.
Yeah, so when
it was all sun
you're
damage or
literally
something.
translucent
Right.
and white, that is the sign of wealth.
Oh.
So when I go home and I'm just like out in the sun, loving it, my grandma literally hovers an umbrella over me and she's like, "Get in here, Janice. You're way too like tan. You need to stop."
Wow. Do you ever have people, like, I know you mentioned like a cab driver or something, they can comment, but like, do you ever have like people bully you for like, because you look westernized?
I don't think people bully me. I think people are curious what the US is like and they ask me more about it.
Oh, that's nice.
It is really nice, but I
Yeah.
do think that there is an element of judging me because I do get looks.
It's a nice way of like, of being judgmental.
No, so I say the judging part is not the nice part. It's like, I'm naturally a loud person and I'm talkative and I like really like to engage with other people. And that is something that is like an American attitude that is really valued, right?
Yeah.
Like this is how
Stand
companies
out.
work. Exactly.
Yeah, be unique.
But in Taiwan, a girl is supposed to be quiet and reserved, and she's supposed to be like cute and
Japan too.
a little bit mysterious, you know, like you don't totally know what's going on there, or like ditzy at the same time. But I'm not like that. I'm like loud, and sometimes I can be forceful. And people look at me and they're just like, why is she so loud? You know? And my grandma or my grandparents are like, why do you keep talking?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. Like, why, like, can you be more quiet? Or like, I'll smile with all my teeth because I'm really excited. She's like, can you be like more reserved?
Wow.
So it's super different. And you get those kind of looks like, okay, clearly that girl is like not fully Taiwanese, like she's Americanized, because you can see that my behaviors are just completely different. And I used to be kind of embarrassed about it. Like I would get red and I would feel really bad. But I think that's also the Americanized side of me that I really embrace now. It's like my ability to connect with people, be loud, make other people feel comfortable.
Right.
And also like my ability to kind of articulate my feelings, right? That's a huge thing that, I don't know, Taiwanese people look down on. It's like, don't vocalize how you feel. That's weak. And
keep it in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now I kind of can articulate that better. And when I go back, I think it scares people sometimes. Like my parents will be like, whoa, why are you disobeying us and speaking out? But I'm like, I'm not disobeying you. I'm just like telling you how I feel.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you ever like flip the script a bit sometimes, and like while you're living in America and stuff, like how your interactions are with like non-Asian people or like Taiwanese people, and like how your Asianness comes off to them?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. Do you?
I mean, yeah, I have so many examples. Of
Okay,
like,
I need some.
well, so when I was growing up, like because I was the only Asian person in my class and like my whole school except for like my sister, I had a lot of jokes, a lot of stereotypes thrown at me. And like what's crazy is that at the time I just thought it was like hilarious. I thought all of like the racist jokes and stuff were like super funny.
Because you didn't know.
I had no idea that it was bad. I was like, it's fine. Like this is like, I'm getting attention. Like people like me. They didn't like me maybe because they were making fun of me. And one of my friends would pull me aside and be like, this is crazy. Like, are you okay? And I'd be like, I'm fine. Like, and I was completely, totally fine. And it was always about like kind of like mocking in like an Asian accent, even though I do not have one and I don't know how to speak Japanese. There'd be like a lot of talk about like how I probably wouldn't be a good driver, like so many things, right? And when you're growing up and that's all you know, it just seems normal until you go to college, until you go and you go out into the world and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to me growing up. It's crazy. And it's just, there were a lot of like, besides just the way I looked, a lot of other cultural differences. Like I had a tiger mom. My mom never let me do anything. I was like restricted to staying in my 10-mile radius small town unless I was going with an adult. My curfew was like 10:30. I had a shower curfew. I needed to take a shower by a certain time before I went to bed.
I've never heard of that before, shower curfew.
I had so many rules.
Did you have to do like math camp?
Yeah, I was in Kumon. I had piano lessons. I did every sport. Like I was, by that definition, like so stereotypical Asian. And that part was really hard for like, growing up in a very American society. My friends didn't understand that. I didn't have like allies to relate to who were like, oh my God, my mom said the same thing. No, my friends' parents let them do whatever the hell they wanted. They got to go, you know, on trips together. Like, they got to leave our small town together. I was not allowed to. We got to go off campus for lunch in high school. I wasn't allowed to do that. Like, there's so many things that it was, and you know, I was a good kid. I got really good grades. I went to UCLA. I got really good grades. I did everything I was supposed to do, but it's like, that's a really relatable experience if you are Asian or Asian American. Super relatable experience. But I didn't have any Asian friends, so I was not relatable. So that was like another example of how the people around me like did not understand like where I was coming from. And I also didn't understand where I was coming from because I didn't know that that was like kind of normal.
But now that you know that this is normal for an Asian or an Asian American, do you go back home and you're like, I'm going to make it my mission to teach them or educate them? Or what do you do?
I'm not really friends with them anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just like,
that's
you know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I kind of like, I don't really talk to my high school friends anymore. I feel like a lot of us are probably in the same boat.
I definitely am too.
Yeah.
But for other reasons.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We won't get into
that. But yeah, I definitely stick more with my college friends, and my like really core group of friends are Asian now, who can better relate to a lot of these like upbringing stories and like feeling discriminated against in like various situations. So like I feel like so much of like my life has been spent trying to fit in with everyone around me. And now I feel like I'm still sometimes trying to fit in, like, you know.
But I think that's true. But you kind of brought up a point that I really like, which is like finding the Venn diagram of being Asian American with other Asian Americans or other Asians. And now it's not so much, for me, I agree with you, it's not so much about fitting in, but it's finding the right people that like I click with.
Right. That kind of get you.
Exactly. And something you brought up was like asking your parents if you could hang out, and they would say no.
Yeah.
I also felt the exact same way. Like I literally had a conversation every time my friends invited me to something and they'd be like, I don't get why you can't come.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm sorry, because I asked last week if I could come to your sleepover. This week I'm not allowed to say anything, so that in 2 weeks I'm able to go to this person's birthday party. And you're planning this on, you're not asking your parents because you're like, I have to reserve these like like planned ahead, like, sorry, can't come because I need this okay for approval for the next month activity. I planned it all out.
You basically like memorized your parents' patterns of like behavior so that you knew when it was okay to ask to go hang out.
Yes, and it would not be okay to ask 2 times in a row.
Yeah.
But then some people just like, a lot of my friends that weren't Asian would be like, this is ridiculous. You just need to ask. I'm like, you don't understand.
You don't get it.
Like, I don't want to fight them for this. Like, this is not worth it to me.
You're picking your battles.
Exactly. But for the friends that got it, they're like, oh, Janice, I completely understand. Like, don't do that. I'm still friends with them now because I know that I can go to them and they'd be like, I get it, you know?
Yeah.
And having to explain constantly why you act the way you do can be really exhausting. Maybe we are like the best of both cultures.
Yes.
You know, we've, on the Americanized side, like we've learned to be more independent, right? Because there's this like Asian view that maybe girls need to be more dependent on men and quiet and shy, and I'm the opposite of that.
Right.
But then we've also have this diverse side of like, we like so many different foods and we really value our family, and we know what it means to like be the eldest in the family.
Right.
And all these things that come with that.
I love that. It's not just trying to pick bits and pieces and like make something, you know, that you don't recognize or doesn't fit anywhere. It's just like, no, I'm picking the best of both worlds, and that is what I am and how I exist. I love that.
And sometimes there are things like beliefs that you grew up with that need to be shattered, right? Just like unhealthy beliefs. But I'm lucky enough to like had the opportunity to grow up and learn that being translucent and pasty is not like how life should be.
Right.
And I can be tan and like love my life too.
Yeah, we can't help but get some of the maybe more unfavorable traits or things that you have to pick up on because that's life. But like we can start taking those and like learning from all of those based on, you know, another culture and like comparing, contrasting, and learning and growing from that.
Right. But you're so right about the surviving, because it's like you would not be exposed to this whole world if you didn't go to UCLA, because you grew up in such a small town.
Oh, my belief system would be completely different. I'd be a totally different person with totally different friends, and yeah, it would be a different life for sure.
And now you're exposed to this whole new world where you could see like not only that you were living in a small town with very narrow beliefs maybe, but just like you are fully living life now.
I am. Yeah, I will say like now that I have so many more friends that are not just Asian, but like specifically Japanese American, it has helped me feel so much more comfortable in my own skin and like definitely embracing more aspects of our culture and like heritage and stuff than I ever did before. So it's quite nice to like, you know, now that we're in our mid-20s to like kind of see this merge of cultures as a good thing.
It is a good thing.
A bad thing.
I think it definitely took time to get here, but I'm glad that we got here. But it's normal to feel like these insecurities with yourself because we're always comparing ourselves to other people.
Always.
But one thing I also really like is now I feel like we know how to connect with so many different types of people.
Yes.
Because we can understand
what it feels like to not feel like you belong.
Right. And all these different perspectives that people are coming from different cultures.
True.
Like if someone was more Asian than I am and they say something that I can kind of resonate with, I'll understand exactly where they're coming from now.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. It's definitely, we've been able to take something that was really hard and like turn it into something that's hopefully going to help our interactions moving forward.
Yeah. And I really hope that this episode doesn't make people feel bad about being too whatever, but it's more just like, here is our experience trying to but trying to learn more about who we are.
And be proud of it.
And learn more about what helps us connect with other people, but also us finding a group of people that we really enjoy and finding ourselves. And this is the whole like mid-20s thing, right? Like you feel lost, but then you find yourself in different moments. So this is just to kind of say like, hey, it's okay to feel the way you feel.
We've been there. And we're figuring it out. And at this point in our lives, it's kind of like coming to a really great moment. We're like trying to figuring out who we are and like we're happy and
it's a good moment.
Yeah.
Lost and found.